You're listening to another great podcast in the MyMac Podcasting Network.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the show where we take a wander around the week in Apple news, reviews, technology, associated products, and all sorts of other things that catch our eye. This is another episode of the Essential Apple Podcast. Hello and welcome to this week's episode. And this week it is the Tucson Takeover because I am joined by a veritable clan of Tucson MUG members. I have with me here today Curt. Hello, Curt.
Good morning.
Morning. And we have Roger. Hello, Roger.
Buenos dias.
Hello. We have David.
Yes. Hello, Simon.
Hello. And is that all? Have I done everybody or have I missed somebody? I've missed Bob, haven't I?
You missed Bob.
Yeah, and Bob. So here we go. All, of course, members not only of the Tucson MUG, but part of the MyMac family and contributors to that website. And so here we are. I don't know how this is going to go with so many guests, but we'll just soldier on regardless, I think. This week, of course, was the shareholder meeting, Apple's shareholder meeting, where Uncle Tim, held forth. There were questions about privacy, politics, there were questions about diversity, and a whole lot of other things. So, I guess, did you boys follow any of that? Or, are you, particularly up to date with what happened at the shareholder meeting?
I have not had a chance to listen to it as yet.
No, I have not either.
No, probably like me. I have, in the notes, I have managed to find on YouTube a guy called Hunter S. Has posted a complete, a nearly 2-hour video shot on his iPhone of the investor meeting. So, should anybody want to, listen to the thing in full, I have a link for that. Apple 3, which is Elmer DeWitt, I believe, posted a piece. In the Steve Jobs Theatre, Apple shareholders eat the air in a promise crammed. I think he's run out of space in his headline there, but apparently Apple is planting seeds and rolling the dice on a long, great roadmap of fantastic products set to blow you away. And I think he's quoting there, or at least paraphrasing, Uncle Tim. Apparently...
Well, it's interesting there that Apple has actually said they're considering lowering prices, which is somewhat good for them.
Yes, that's interesting, isn't it? Because that's not normally... Although, what did he say precisely? It was something we are aware of the price issue, something?
Well, he said the goal was to lower the price of the $1,200 MacBook Air and bring it out with a high resolution screen.
Right.
But that's just part of a long, great roadmap of fantastic products limited to Apple Watch and AirPods.
Okay, very good. That's nice, isn't it? I suppose we could all... I'm sure everybody would be happy with a few dollars shaved off the price of Apple gear. Certainly, some of it has become, really quite pricey. He also promised that there will be more health features coming to the smartwatch, but he apparently, according to this, has declined to expand on that very much. Apparently, there was a bit of a kerfuffle about diversity. According to one of the reports, some people were going on about diversity in the Apple board, but apparently when somebody said, "Can we just move on?" there was a large round of applause, and the diversity proposal was voted down by 98%, apparently. So I think the shareholders are more worried about whether the shares perform all right than how many, minority or other diversity type people are on the board, which it is true. We all know, don't we? The Apple board does basically consist of old white guys. So there we go. That's tech, I think. It's full of old white guys like me.
Yeah. It is. The world is changing.
Yeah.
But you got to have a little bit of vitamin time to allow it all to work. So
Yep.
it's just going to take time, but it's headed in, I think, the right direction. So.
Yep, I think so too. I mean, Apple certainly are not. They're not averse to putting forward women to positions of power, are they? I mean, they've they've had Angela Arendt, and now the was it Deirdre?
Right.
She's head of people and retail.
Yeah.
Here we are.
It's being a retired professional engineer way back in the class of 75, we didn't have a single female in our graduating class here at the university. And now I think there are about 45% female in the College of Engineering here at the University of Arizona. Don't quote me on that exact number, but I know it has become very, very encouraged to see that diversity building in just in the male-female and race-wise. It's I think it's also improved highly. That's what 40. I can't do the math. It's been a long time. And a lot of vitamin time there.
Yeah, well, there we go. I mean, here we go. On CNET, Tim said, "We are open to people from all walks of life, noting that this includes political points of view, religious beliefs, sexual orientation," and he encouraged anyone with concerns to say something. "We live in a polarised world," he said, adding he doesn't believe it needs to be, and he doesn't check people at the door about their beliefs. So there we go. I think Tim's made it perfectly clear plenty of times that he doesn't hold with any sort of racism, sexism, ageism, or anything else. So there we go.
Yeah,
that's good. What else did they report? Tim Cook hit out at companies like Facebook as well, of course, saying anything that collects personal data and uses it against customers should not exist. Well, I think most of us agree with that, don't we?
Yeah. It is getting creepy.
It's a question of controlling it. That's the issue.
Yes, that's true. I was on Bart Bouchot's show yesterday, and when this subject came up, I mentioned a piece I'd read, or two pieces, in fact, about one was a woman who was attempting to conceal her pregnancy from Facebook, not from people in real life, but she just didn't want Facebook particularly, and she was wrote an article about how that didn't work. And on the other side, there was a woman who said she decided to fake a pregnancy and see how long it would take Facebook to start sending her, maternity-related adverts. So she downloaded an app called What to Expect, obviously, which is about being pregnant. And within 11 hours, Facebook was sending her pregnancy-related advertising. So there you go. Just to prove they're hoovering up everything in sight.
Yep.
Not only has he hit out there, of course, he also gave an interview where he was talking about privacy and health. This one's reported on the Mac Observer. I mean, has anybody seen any of these particularly, or
health?
Well, yeah, the health records one is Tim Cook is definitely aware of apps which have shared health information to Facebook.
Yeah.
Ooh, no, I haven't seen that here, but I do really appreciate the health capability between the watch and my iPhone.
Yeah,
and I know my medical providers here are slowly but surely entering into this online cloud record sharing and that. But it makes me a little bit nervous because they're not all Apple users, and who's doing their security and encrypting and what have you. But fortunately, nothing yet has shown up in my Facebook or Twitter account that looks like they're tracking my health.
No, that's good. I mean, basically, Apple, through Tim, have not only said that they want to expand their work in the health and fitness sphere, but also, he's very much pushing Apple as the way, because you can trust us with your private health information.
Well, they've started a program with the Veterans Administration, so that's kind of the prototype for everybody to have health records on their iPhone so that they can, first of all, make it portable. So no matter doctor they go to, they'll have their information that they can voluntarily provide without, through the clipboard routine every time they walk into a doctor's office.
Yeah, yes, that came up yesterday as well, because as Bart said, and maybe it's slightly less of an issue in this country with the National Health Service, but it still is a thing. If you change hospitals or health providers for whatever reason, or simply move around the country, your health notes have to go with you. And obviously, the whole VA thing is meant to enable veterans to have their own, agency over their own health notes, so that they can go basically to any hospital and have their notes with them, rather than relying on the hospitals to pass the information one to the next, which it doesn't seem like a big deal to us here in the UK, like I say, with the National Health Service. But obviously, in you have a different model there, and I'm pretty sure that often the hospitals have nothing to do with each other.
That's true.
Well, it's true with the civilian side of it, but within the veteran side of it, that's kind of a mini national health service. But even that just gets so messed up over the many years of paper records. It's just, again, going to take them time to get into the digital age and do it right.
As you say, Apple are providing that now as a service. So, I'm pretty sure that's as you say, a kind of a prototype model for where they want to go.
Yes, I think it's a good start.
It is a good start, and I mean, Apple, of course, we know that Apple have put in quite a lot of effort. They provide they're providing some medical clinics, aren't they, for their own staff?
Yes,
and it's been speculated that perhaps Apple are looking to, maybe even providing health as a service. Interesting concept, I have to say.
Yeah, it's a lot of regulations they have to go through and to make sure it's all right. But I understand they actually built a prototype clinic and staffed it with medical people. I think there was a young lady doctor that does 20% of her work actually in the emergency room, and then the rest of it's working for Apple.
Well, yeah, and obviously, they say that they've done that as a perk for their employees, but several sort of
also a beta test.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of observers have said, imagine if Apple were to go into providing healthcare, in the same way as they have apparently, these fabulous retail stores which rake in more money than Tiffany's per square meter.
Right.
What about if Apple were to start offering you your healthcare?
Well,
I think,
you look at how much more is technology going to increase to keep up with the pace of coming out with a new phone every year, a new iPad. Well, you're kind of pushing the end of the envelope there. So services, I can really understand. That's got to be a big underpinning of Apple in the future.
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, the iPhone has propelled Apple to, monstrous, gargantuan proportions. And you start to come up against the sort of law of big numbers, don't you? You just cannot continue to grow forever, or you would take over the whole world. It reached the point where what you're going to do, make everybody buy a second phone. It's so if you're going to continue to expand, you've got to expand into different areas.
Apple is very careful about that. They sit back and watch a category of goods and take their time about stepping into it to see, first of all, is it worth it? And then if it is, what can they do to make it better? And I think this is perhaps the foldable iPhone thing that we have been exposed to over the last week from the Barcelona thing. That phone is very scary to me at this point. How many times can you fold a piece of plastic before it fails? So Apple is not, I don't think, is going to jump into this for quite a while.
No, that's yes, we can. I've got a couple of stories here about that, but obviously the foldable is the buzzword of the year at the moment after Mobile World Congress. Everybody's going on about foldable devices.
Right.
I was reading a piece, I think it was yesterday, about a foldable gadget. Can't remember which one now, but they claimed that they had tested it to 100,000 folds. But even that, over the life of something that you take out of your pocket and flip open, maybe 100 times a day? How long is
Right.
that?
Well, if it's 10 times a day, that's 3,600 folds of plastic in a year.
Yeah.
And most of us open or at least look at our phones way more than that. So, I'm the whole concept sort of is going to take some time to work out.
I'm somewhat skeptical, to be honest. It's one of these things that at the minute it's very cool, it's very clever, it's
Right.
very new.
Right.
And if you want to stand out, I guess, in what has now become a fairly standardized landscape,
Right.
I can see why everybody's rushing at it, and of course, it's new and it's different, so it gives everybody something to write about and take photographs of. But
that's right. Well, I think that Johnny Ives and company are taking a very careful look at this too. The two phones that are out so far, one folds inward like a book, the other one has a screen on the outside where the screen is folded the other way, and in both cases it puts a big crease in the screen. Even some of the press photos that I've seen of the Huawei phone, if you look at it at an angle, you can see the wrinkle in the middle of the screen. So it's definitely not ready for prime time.
Right.
No,
definitely the thickness once it's good.
Right.
You start to get the old brick.
Yep.
Does it fit in your pocket? Does it
That's
fit where you want to carry it comfortably?
Well, you can't put a real crease in the phone, so it's got to be, it's like rolling the screen around a pencil, so that it doesn't crack. Well,
Right.
that means that the phone is going to be thick.
Yep.
And Apple's whole thing has been, the last 10 years has been, look, each iteration, look how much thinner we've gotten this thing.
Yep.
Yeah. It's I know. It's like, Johnny, what is your aim? To make it as thin as a credit card? I mean,
Right.
yeah, I think a lot of people, including me, are like, that's lovely. It's really lovely, but we're not. I think we're thin enough. We don't really need to. It can't need to be a wafer thin mint.
Right. Well,
but,
some. Go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
So, well, I just said some wag was saying that they can't wait for Apple to come out with one of these phones so that it will stop this tidal wave of bad phones until this thing is fixed by Apple.
Yeah, well, I don't really have any doubt that Apple have a foldable phone, somewhere
sure
deep in the bowels of their design studios. But I think the comment that most people make is, but Apple won't release it unless they A, think it's really viable, and B, that it's not just a fad. It's not just let's do this because everybody else is doing it.
Well, that's over the years, Apple has looked at a lot of products and probably made a bunch of prototypes for them and then decided this isn't for us. I mean, look at netbooks. The world said that these were going to take over the world, and Apple never jumped in, and in fact, they went away. Physical televisions is a good example. For a while, everybody was interested in digital photo frames. Apple just stood back on that.
Yeah, that's true. What was it? Oh yeah. At the call, of course. At the shareholders meeting, Tim Cook said that amongst the, we have a lot of stuff in development. I think he said something along the lines of, we've got a lot of great things in development, some of which we're going to, blow your socks off. Some of them might, never actually come to fruition because they might not make the cut.
Right.
And I'm sure that's how any design company must have to work. Engineering's not my thing, but when you're designing anything, there are often iterations that you look at and go, no, I don't like that. That's not going anywhere.
Right.
That's a dead end. And what was it Steve used to say? It's as much about the things you say no to as the things you say yes to.
Exactly.
What else have we got? Oh, interestingly, the old guard of Mac independent apps have been thriving for more than 25 years. Effectively, this is on Macworld. It's pointing out that there's some apps that we've probably not even really noticed have been around forever. But 25 years ago, since products like BB Edit, Graphic Converter, Fetch, FTP, amazing.
These are third parties you're talking about.
Yes, these are third-party products from independent developers. BB Edit and Graphic Converter. These apps have been going for 25 years now,
right?
And are still going strong.
Yeah,
and that's a pretty big achievement, I think, in technology. I mean, 25 years ago, what they're talking 1993, we're classic era, 030 and 040 Motorola chips.
FileMaker is actually an Apple product, but I mean that one is also.
Yes,
I've been using that for at least 25 years. So.
Yep. Yeah, that's it is. It's surprising, It's just you don't tend to think about it because these products have always just kind of been there, floating around, and
well, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right.
If it works for you, it's wonderful. The developers will still support their product after that many years. Must have a good customer base. They've probably earned the appreciation from their customer base to keep using it, and so they can afford to keep upgrading it. Hats off to these independent developers that have been able to survive outside of the Apple ecosystem. Some of the security things that are going on now within the Apple operating system might prevent some of these longtime developers from actually being able to run on the Mac. That's a concern. It's just it's an interesting situation, but again, 25 years, that's a real accomplishment.
Yep, that's and I'm sure there are probably more, but those are the ones they particularly called out. And yes, I mean, I think part of the big thing is still being not only that they're making a living from these apps and they've been supporting them and developing them for 25 years or more, but the fact that that they are still they're still standing as independent software houses, that they've not been swallowed up by other entities, which seems to happen to so many successful moderate-sized software houses.
So many times in the past decade, products, companies, services are started with the intent of selling it off to somebody. Mm-hmm. These people, BB Edit and the ones mentioned here, such as the graphics one,
Graphic Converter,
Graphic Converter. They were started by entrepreneurs who loved the whole idea, wanted to continue with it, and have seen it as their baby, not as something, okay, let's pump this up, sell it off, and either start something new or go retire to an island in the South Pacific.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, as it says here, whilst talking about Graphic Converter evolved from a simple file conversion into a full-fledged image editor, image file browser, and batch process manager. Despite all of this development, Lemke says there's always a full plate of user requests for new features and workflows.
Right.
Further development will be assured. So there you go.
I talked to him several times at the very Mac World shows here, and he still, probably twice a year, pushes out very significant upgrades to that thing. It's just a wonderful app. It
is a very good app, and I think it's a sort of a hidden gem.
Yeah.
I think because of its name and its its origin as a file format switcher, right. I don't think there are a lot of people who are not aware of its full capabilities, and it is a very powerful graphics editor.
Well, it's quite good at sort of minor fixes for photos. If I'm going to post a photo, to put in a review for my Mac, for instance, I do it in Graphic Converter because I can alter the resolution and you can do basic touch-ups and so on. And it works just fine. And because it's relatively small, it's very lightweight. It opens in an instant and goes away when you don't need it. So it's become the sort of app of choice for casual photo manipulation. If you want to, get serious, obviously there are many other choices, but for just one-off quick things, Graphic Converter does the job.
Oh, very much so. Yeah. I mean, it's it always amazes me, really, actually, Graphic Converter, that in some ways you think perhaps you should have changed the name.
Yes.
Because, but then again, I guess he just, once you've established it, that's what it is. Just keep on trucking.
Got it.
As someone who's been using Photoshop since the early 90s, I am comfortable in Photoshop and do most of my editing there, but I still have a little bit of emotional problem paying the Adobe tax with the every month subscription. And one of the possible ways around that is to use Photoshop Elements, which you can buy. And for some features that they don't include in Photoshop Elements, Graphic Converter can do those for you, such as conversion into CMYK for printing on high-end web presses and so forth. So that's a possible solution to getting away from the Adobe tax.
Mm.
Yep, very, very much so. The other popular choices, of course, at the minute being Affinity Photo and the Pixelmator Pro, both of which are.
Oh, don't forget Luminar. I mean, that's who I've pretty much converted over to now. I use that for almost everything.
Luminar, of course, but Luminar is more of a sort of a Lightroom photographer's photo manipulating tool, isn't it? And
yes.
It's more pitched at that rather than I'm not saying it doesn't do the touch-ups and things, because it does, but that's not its primary focus in the way that Photoshop or Affinity Photo or the like are. But yeah, there's lots of options out there for as you say, Adobe Elements itself, which you can buy outright. So yeah, the whole subscription thing is something it comes up fairly regularly, and I think the problem is if you're not a professional user, then paying a subscription for most software, unless you feel that it's like a service, I don't mind paying for my email from Proton Mail, because obviously that's almost like a service. You use it all the time. And at work, we don't object to paying subscriptions for Microsoft Office or the Creative Cloud. But then those are kind of in use 8 hours a day. As a home user, I think a lot of people find the idea of paying a subscription to use a tool like Photoshop, I don't know, just doesn't feel right somehow.
Right. I agree.
This month, apparently, new data has come out saying that vinyl and CD sales are now more popular than iTunes downloads.
I think that the key word there is downloads. I think what's happening is that the world is switching to streaming music, and I think that is where the numbers are.
Yes, that was my thought, my initial thought when I read this piece, which was on 9 to 5 Mac.
Right.
My thoughts were downloads. It's about downloads. People shifted away from physical media to buying music from iTunes and downloading it into their own libraries. But the world has moved on now, and most people seem to be happy to pay a
Apple Music does pretty much anything you want it to do. People whine and complain about, I don't like the interface, and I don't but the point is that you
all right.
Think of a song, and I want to hear it right now, and ta-da, you can do it with Apple Music. So I only have 2 friends that I know of now that still maintain that they want to own their own music, physically own their own music. But the rest of us, I've got drawers full of CDs here that I'm not sure what to do with.
They make good coasters for your coffee mugs. Dear. Yeah, that was my thought altogether, that the money is moved to streaming services, Apple Music, Spotify, rather than away, and it's and the people who buy CDs or vinyl, those sort of people who they like to collect that in its physical form. There's probably a certain percentage of people, maybe they also have a streaming, maybe they also have streaming, but they actually physically like collecting the the vinyl or whatever. So I think that's probably sort of
album art and the all of the copy that was on them and so on and so forth. We miss all of that.
Yeah, and there is a certain tactile pleasure, I think, in taking a vinyl record out of the sleeve and putting it on the turntable and all that. And then there's the whole analog music debate. But I think that's probably a fairly static market. There are X number of people who like to do that, and there will probably always be X number of people who like to do that. But downloads has faded. I think that's the point there.
Well, Curt, since CDs are more popular now, you should be selling those on eBay or Amazon.
No kidding.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Oh dear.
25 years ago, we moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, and I had just piles of LPs that I ended up giving to anybody who'd take them. And now I'm saying to myself, some of those original vinyl things were probably worth a lot of money, but they're gone now.
Yeah. Although, interestingly, my daughter has got into vinyl.
Yep. We got a granddaughter that's the same. She just absolutely loves vinyl.
I think she. I think it is. Yes, for her, it's a tactile thing of the. I mean, for me, I guess there's a certain amount of nostalgia in it when you do it. You sit down and
certainly
pull up. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I have a whole stack of vinyl records, probably about 3 feet wide, if you put them that way, and 2 turntables and a mixer to digitize them, and I never find the time to get around to doing that.
Yep.
I did the same thing. I used to have a nice big stereo system with all the components, and it just filled up the whole living room wall. And then I bought a HomePod, and our son said, "Oh, I'll take that stereo system, Dad." And I was glad you got it. And now just my little HomePod sits in my den here, and it just gives me all the music and whatever I want to do with it, and it doesn't take up much more than a roll of toilet paper would.
The iPod was one of the reasons that it was such a revolutionary product is that it sort of marked the end of the period where we would sit in the living room and listen to music out loud.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just such a foreign concept now. So, if we have been recently doing a lot of listening to full albums on Apple Music out loud in the living room, and it's a very nice experience once again.
Yeah, that is true. Actually, it's not something I thought of, but you are right. The sort of the birth of the iPod was very much, I think, the beginning of the end of the teenager, sitting in their bedroom playing their records out loud,
Right. Out very loud, right?
Oh, very loud, yes. Turn that down. Yes. Get off my lawn.
Got it.
Right. Use headphones.
Right.
I also have divested myself of my stereo component system, but I still have the stereo cabinet, one with the glass door on the front. But on top, where the turntable used to be, is now a laser printer, and inside is a bunch of external hard drives, backups. So I've repurposed that part of it, but I didn't have to drag my stereo components across the country as well the last time I moved.
Yeah, it's quite strange, isn't it? Really, when you look back and you realise how things have changed.
Do you remember back when you got your first transistor radio?
No.
Maybe I'm showing my age.
I remember
wonderful
my
50s.
mom bought my sister and I transistor radios for Christmas. They cost $125 a piece.
Yep. Yep.
And those were big dollars back then.
Those
Yeah.
were big
Oh,
dollars.
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember at one point I had a little radio that needed some repairs, and I took it into a little independent shop, and the guy sort of looked at it over the top of his glasses, and he said, "This must be one of those transistor gadgets."
Oh dear. Right. Well, we were talking about gadgets and new form factors and the like. Did anybody see this Nubia Alpha from Mobile World Congress? It's to do with the whole bendy phone thing, but this is they've bent it into a sort of a cuff somewhere between a phone and a smartwatch.
Watch. Oh, God.
I don't
There's
know.
been a couple of those that came along over the past couple of years. The last one I saw was like about 3 or 4 inches lengthwise along your wrist, but this one is a much smaller screen size.
Cuff, yeah.
Well, this one it actually is. I don't know. Looking at it, it looks like it's probably maybe an inch wide, but it wraps all the way round, like a cuff. Apparently, you swipe up and down on the flexible screen to scroll between the various widgets of information like time and settings. The UI is so convoluted you want to take the Alpha off and chuck it in the trash can. I have to say it's a pretty hideous looking thing. Oh dear. No.
So many products made because they can make them, and not necessarily because it has any function. Oh God.
No. Well, people have been talking about doing wrapping a sort of a screen like this round a cuff, and a bit like those snap bracelets that
Yes.
were all the rage. The sort of weird sprung thing in a bit of polythene, and you whack your wrist with it, and it snaps around into a bracelet. And that's exactly what this looks like, but it's hideous. And again, it's like, yes, we can do it. Yes, but why would you want to? It's the stupidest idea ever.
It looks like it has a camera on it too.
Oh yes, it has a camera, and it's got the whole lot.
Sounds like a cross between Batman's utility belt and Wonder Woman's cuffs that she uses. Like
on Mashable here, I'm all for new form factors, but the Alpha is just a prototype masquerading as a product. The screen's durability doesn't inspire confidence. Nubia says the screen can be bent up to 100,000 times before it breaks. Oh dear.
Oh my goodness.
And it's selling at €450, which is about $510.
Mm.
Or alternatively, you could just go and get a decent Apple Watch.
Right.
Yeah. I won't tell you how much I paid for my 15-inch tablet.
Oh, right. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I know.
The guys know.
I'm sure
I got a 15-inch tablet that has 4 wheels attached to it now.
Right.
And an app that is
Mobile technology.
an app that is free from the Apple Store. But boy, does it cost a lot of money to use.
Mm. That is true. There we go.
takes a lot of electricity to fill up that Tesla too, doesn't it, Dave?
Yes, it does.
Oh dear.
Well, that's kind of the Apple of the automobile industry right now with Mr. Elon Musk.
Oh yes, very much so.
It's a fun machine. It's a fun machine. If you hadn't had a chance to test drive one of them, I'll tell you, you fall in love.
Didn't they launch their Model 3 this week?
The $35,000 Model 3 has been launched. So yeah, we should, and I think we got a lot of them coming over there across the pond right now. The little higher end one, but yeah, it's my new Apple. I think there's some similarities between Steve and Elon. They live in a different world. But
They do live in a different world. I think it's probably true that people like Elon and Steve, and to some extent, Jeff Bezos,
Yeah.
they often end up with a thing, saying not particularly nice people. But I think that there's a certain amount of that you have to have
Yep.
in order to do what they do, to build these companies, to drive forward. I think you have to have a certain amount of ruthlessness and a certain amount of unpleasantness about you. Kind of goes with the territory, I think.
Yeah, it does. And, I guess you wonder where Apple would be today if we hadn't lost Steve. Tim's doing a pretty good job of managing it. But you ever think about it, where was Steve headed, and how much of that has been lost when he passed on us? So,
yeah. That's kind of interesting to think about, although quite a lot of people have said, and I think I probably agree with them, that Steve chose Tim to carry on the company for a good reason, because he knew where Apple was going, growing into this gargantuan corporation, and that has to be run by somebody who understands how that works.
Yeah.
I don't think you can run Apple like a startup, although they talk about doing that as best they can, but
diverted by cost of what technology is doing today in the phone business. And technology is still, I think Moore's law applies a lot, but it all seems to apply to the dollar.
Follow the money.
Follow the money.
Follow the money. Follow the money. Yeah, you're too right. Yes, but I don't know. The thing about the cost of devices is sometimes I think it's deceptive, because you have to remember that, Apple had products like the 2FX, which was $9,000. And that was when $9,000 was worth a lot more than $9,000 today.
Lisa was a really expensive machine.
Yeah, well, the Lisa was what, 10,000?
10,000.
10? Yeah, give or take. So, and then you extrapolate those back. I mean, I don't know what you're talking now, 25,000 or something.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So then you look at that and you think, well, proportionately, I think on the whole, technology has just got more and more powerful and cheaper.
Yeah.
And then probably will continue to carry on doing so to some extent. Right. Well, what else have we got, boys? Microsoft's CEO, Satya Nadella, has been taking the same stance on privacy as Tim Cook, according to the Mac Observer, by the way. Not surprised to hear it to some extent. Microsoft under Satya Nadella is not the Microsoft your father knew, as it were.
That's true.
At the Mobile World Congress, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella echoed publicly the notions of Apple's Tim Cook on customer privacy. Nadella's Microsoft seems to be moving in a similar direction as the old guard of more responsible technologists join forces to combat the unintended consequences of tech firms that have moved fast and loose in their treatment and support of user privacy. So there you go. Probably the right thing to be saying, I guess.
With all the leaks, all the problems that have been happening here in the past few years. I think you need to do that.
I think so very much. And related to that, as it happens, the EFF have launched a campaign called Fix It Already to push Apple and other tech companies for change. They've basically put up a set of demands, which is at fixitalready.eff.org. And they are asking, for example, Android should let users deny and revoke apps' internet permissions. Apple should let users encrypt their iCloud backups. Facebook should leave your phone number where you put it, apparently. Actually, I think Facebook should just stop being scumbags, was probably what they should put down. Slack should give free accounts control over retention. Twitter should end-to-end encrypt all direct messages. Venmo should let people hide their friends lists. Verizon should stop pre-installing spyware on users' phones.
Ooh.
WhatsApp should get your consent before you're added to a group. And Windows 10 should let users keep their disk encryption keys to themselves.
Now there's a wish list.
Yeah.
There we go. That's the Electronic Frontier Foundation and their fix-it-already demands. Apple, apparently, to follow on that, Tim Cook has said that he actually agrees with that, and that is something they're looking into. So there we go. I'm not sure that any of the others would be so compliant.
Right.
So data on your Apple device is encrypted so no one but you can access it. That's great for privacy. When the data is backed up to the cloud, it is encrypted so that Apple and not just the user can access it. This makes the backups vulnerable to government requests and third-party hacking. Tim Cook already thinks encrypting iCloud backups is a good idea and wants to implement it in the future. The future is now, Tim. Some users might find it helpful for Apple to be able to recover their backups when they forget their passwords, but that's not true for everybody. It's time to let users choose security and encrypt their iCloud backups so only they have the key. I think that's
there's lots of situations where the user is really responsible for remembering passwords. So that's nothing new. So this is kind of a nanny state situation where Apple is saying, well, we want to help you if you forget your password, whereas in many other cases, including in Apple, if you forget your password for like your encrypted iTunes backup of your iOS devices, you're just out of luck.
Yep, that is true. But there we go. That's one. So Apple have said they're interested in doing that. I don't know what the others are, how they've responded. The link is in the show notes if you want to follow it. What else have we got here, boys?
Xfinity.
Yeah, Xfinity mobile pins have been left set to 0000 by default, according to Engadget. And this has already resulted in people getting hacked, apparently. Yes, they should not be doing that, but then at the same time, if you've bought, something from Xfinity and its pin is 0000, should you not have changed it? Not the brightest thing in the world to leave something set by default, is it, really?
No.
Yes, bad Xfinity, but foolish of anybody to leave it set to that, if you want my honest opinion.
Yep.
This one has come up as well. The iPhone and Android hacking tool used by the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security can be found on sale on eBay for as little as $100, according to 9to5Mac. Now, this is kind of vindication of the nothing ever stays secret argument, I think you would say. When the US government, the FBI or whatever, were pushing for keys to, be able to get at bad people's data from their phones. But Celebrite and whatnot have all said, oh, well, these machines we've made, they'll be safe with us because only, legal and approved people will be able to have them. Well, guess what? You can buy a second-hand one on eBay for $100.
Now, my understanding was that Apple pretty much defeated what those machines were doing. Maybe that's why they're $100 now.
Yes, well, I have it. This came up. Obviously, it's still very bad that these things are available to all and sundry on the open market for $100. That's proof of why you shouldn't let such things.
Well, that's true.
But I have it on good authority from at Dougie in the Slack room, our digital forensics man, that yes, effectively these things are worthless. If you buy one for $100 as a toy, be aware that effectively it's useless on anything later than a 4S. So to some extent, it's not as bad as it might seem, but it's still very poor that such things are available in trading hands. Because we were promised they wouldn't, and like we all knew, that was going to be cobblers.
Yep.
So there we are. And now I think, we've been going a moderate amount of time, boys. So, shall we wrap up then with this story, which I think Bob put in there, which is the EU copyright, the dreaded Article 13 and 11. That, for anybody who doesn't know, Article 13 is the EU's copyright directive, which the final version was agreed after some talks in France. I don't know about this. This is one of those things where it seems to me like the intention is good, and the reasoning is that they want to help, copyright holders make sure that they are treated fairly. But the implementation strikes me as probably badly thought out and likely to not do what they hope.
Yeah, I think
Well, I
I've
think
heard.
the problem is that right now it just amazes me that there's so many websites, news sites especially, that all they do is accumulate stories from other websites that actually did the reporting or the research, and they don't do any actual original stories themselves. They just quote other people, and that's, I think, part of why this came to fruition, is because the people that did the work and, dug into these different topics, are basically being plagiarized.
Yes. This is the problem. I think Article 13 states that content sharing services must license copyright protected material from the original rights holders. If that is not possible, material is posted on the service, the company may be held liable unless it can demonstrate that it did its best to get permission from the copyright holder. It made best efforts to ensure that material is not made available. It acted quickly to remove infringing material. The problem here is, I think that I agree with you. I agree with you. There are lots of these sort of aggregator services where they take other people's work and just publish it. There's also quite a lot of stolen, copyright infringing material put up on sites like YouTube and the like. But I don't really know how you go about tackling that effectively. What they're proposing seems to be to put the liability on the big internet companies or service providers. But I don't know. Google and various other people are against it because they say it's going to shut down, everything from memes to people posting pictures, to Twitter. I don't know. It's a very difficult subject.
I have to agree. It sounds like even this podcast here that we're doing right now, who's to say that somebody in here saying, well, gee, you didn't get the license for me to talk about what we just got done talking about. So BC, and take you down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of scary.
It's
Well, if you look at the music industry right now, look at radio stations. They pay various organizations, I think there's just a couple of them, a license fee for any music that they play. So the same type of situation could be set up for internet content, where you just go to like a service bureau, I guess, and you pay a license fee, and it covers, everybody, instead of having to, go out and pay each individual content creator.
Yeah. The problem I see with that is, at least with music, and to some extent, I guess, with things like films, you're dealing with a sort of a closed pool to a large extent, aren't you? You can have an industry body that collects these license fees and then distributes them, I don't know, amongst the various record companies and record producers and whatnot. But it is effectively a closed pool. Whereas if you're, I don't know, if you're, say, YouTube, stuff is coming from everywhere. Do you see what I mean? How do you
police it?
How do you moderate it? How do you decide what is what is original artistic content and what is just my daughter makes videos and puts on YouTube. The sort of typical YouTube thing, talking about the makeup she's bought or clothes she's seen, that sort of thing, and puts it up as a little show. So, there are millions upon millions of people doing that. How do you, if somebody takes a piece of that show and reuses it, how do you because technically that show is copyright of my daughter. She made it. She put it on YouTube.
And then
It's
if on this podcast she says, well, this particular makeup I don't particularly like, then does that open a door to somebody saying, hey, you're denigrating my product?
Yeah, this is, So anyway, on this article it says Article 13 is the part of the EU copyright directive covering how online content sharing services should deal with copyright content. It refers to services primarily existing to give the public access to protected works or other protected subject matter uploaded by users. There is a long list of exemptions, however, which include non-profit online encyclopedias, i.e. Wikipedia, that is, isn't it? Open source software development platforms, cloud storage services, online marketplaces, and communication services. Then again, these things are all, again, open to another layer of interpretation, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's, is Twitter a communication service or not?
Yeah.
Is Facebook an online marketplace? No, I don't know. Obviously, we will have to see what happens. I think, it's not actually law yet. I think it's being voted on shortly.
Yeah, it's either going to be this month or March or April when they're going to do the final vote.
As I say, I believe its intention was good. It said the EU wished to make copyright rules fit for a digital age. I just don't think the implementation has been thought through. They've done some very good things, the EU, in the online space, but I think this one could end up being a sledgehammer to crack a lawn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, another part of this is only the EU, so this is not going to restrict countries in the other parts of the world, which is, going to hurt companies in the EU that are doing internet businesses, and just shift them into a country that doesn't have these regulations.
Yeah. I have no idea what's going to come out of that. I guess it's one of those we just have to wait and see what happens. And no doubt it will, if it goes through, it will all have to be tested in, courts of law all the way up to the highest courts available, and will drag on for years, no doubt.
And the intellectual property attorneys will be the ones that are going to be profiting from all this.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. The only people who are going to get fat on that one are lawyers, I think. Well, right then. I think we'll call that a show, boys. So, thank you all for coming on and contributing. And this is the bit where we all sort of promote ourselves. So, shall we take it from the top? Bob, where can people find you?
Well, they can find my photography at my photography website, which is dangerousbob.photography. I would also like to say that we should mention tmug.com, the Tucson Mac User Group website. If you are in the southeastern Arizona area, come and see what we're all about. Finally, I'd like to do a shout out to another Tucson troublemaker, John Nemo, who wanted to be with us, was unable to get the time. I think Mrs. Nemo kind of controls the calendar there. So hi, John, and we missed you.
Yeah, well, we're also missing John ourselves this week because there's no hardware store for exactly the same reason. Right, so I'll put that in the show notes. So that's dangerousbob.photography. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the T-Mug is, what was that again, Bob?
tmug.com.
tmug.com.
tmug.com. Okay, so I'll put those in the show notes. Roger, where can people find you?
Well, on social media, I'm Go for Tech.
Okay, there we go. So let's Go for Tech. Okie dokie. Curt?
I'm azcurt.com. And social media is azcurt.
Okay.
Arizona, azcurt.
Right, azcurt on, and azcurt.com. Well, that's easy, isn't it? And David?
Well, I'm over on the Twitter, and you can find me at DM Acklam at DM Acklam1.
Okay.
And other than that, we forgot to mention Roger's still doing the Facebook page there for the Teague Mug people. So
okay,
visit our Facebook page too.
And okay, T-Mug on Facebook.
And
Roger and David.
yeah, I generally do try to put stuff up there now, but I got my new toy, so you'll find me on Twitter mainly with the Tesla people.
So, David, instead of putting a Apple sticker on the rear window of your Tesla, are you going to be putting a Tesla sticker on the back of your iPad?
Very good. I haven't thought about that. They do make a Tesla iPhone case, but like everything else Elon does, it's too expensive.
Yeah, there we go. And David, of course, last time you were on, you were talking also about your space interests with the
university, right? The OSIRIS-REx mission, and yes, that of course they have been in orbit now with the asteroid Bennu. And you can follow them. I don't have their link now. Just Google OSIRIS-REx. It's an exciting mission to an asteroid. The spacecraft team is led by Professor Dante Loretti out here at the University of Arizona. And they'll be spending a couple of years studying this asteroid, and then they're going to come down and grab a little sample and bring it back to Earth. So it'll get here in about 2023. So check that out.
Yep, that's a very interesting mission. I've been keeping an eye on that. Right, and
let me give you one more plug here. We just had the premiere of the GPS documentary Within the Air Force Hierarchy, and it is still available on Amazon Prime. So if you're a Prime member, it's free. Look up the Lonely Halls Meeting. It's the documentary on the development of what we take for granted today, the Global Positioning System, or GPS.
Yep, I saw that. Obviously, it's a very interesting documentary, and for anybody who hasn't listened to it, I also have an interview with David a few months back. Just scroll back through the Essential Apple pages, and you will find it under From Obscurity to Ubiquity. And you can hear David telling me all about it on that show. So, I am on the Twitters as @Serenak, and that's SERENAK. And the show is, of course, @Essential Apple, and all our stuff is @essentialapple.com. And I think that's probably about it. So thank you, everybody, for coming on the show. And we'll all just say goodbye, shall we? Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thanks, Simon.
Adios.
You've been listening to the Essential Apple podcast, and I'd like to say if you enjoy the show and would like to support us, feel free to go over to the website essentialapple.com, and you will find links to both Patreon and the Pinecast Tips Jar, where you can make a donation towards the costs of the show, or even if you're really keen, you could set up a recurring payment. And thank you very, very much to all the people who already do support us. We really do appreciate you very much indeed. This show is, of course, part of the MyMac podcasting network, where you can find a variety of other shows like the MyMac podcast with Guy and Gaz, the G-Men, Tech Fan with Tim and David, the Nintendo Club podcast, the geekiest show ever, the Three Geeky Ladies, Bart Bouchot's and his wonderful Let's Talk Apple, and possibly some more that I've forgotten. So why not go over to mymac.com, take a look at the available podcasts, and take a listen.
Yeah, I think just a straight ad, don't you?
Yeah.
Like what? What would we say? Like Tech Fan Podcast or?
Are you interested in technology and gadgets?
Uh-huh.
Do you want to listen to two guys who know technology and gadgets?
Are we claiming to be those guys?
Yes. Well, there we go. Are we claiming to be those guys? You be the judge. Tech Fan Podcast.
No, that'll work. Let's use that as an ad.
Okay.
been the Essential Apple Podcast. Goodbye and thank you for listening.